Um, I'm not even going to get into the whole bankers situation on this video because it's going to be an entire 15 to 20-minute video when I start going into it. Um, I will say this on the HARP angle to the earthquake. I do believe that HARP is capable of it. I do also believe that there are other nations that have things similar to HARP. Um, an interesting correspondence of Chernobyl is that if you go and look in some of the videos that are taken of Chernobyl, either at the time or afterwards, there's one that I remember specifically at the very end. They show them from an airplane flying around the site of Chernobyl, and this was probably 2008 when it was filmed. And what they did is they were flying along and they showed these giant radar arrays. And I will, like I said, I will find the video for you and I'll link it on, I'll put it on my YouTube. But it's a giant radar, a wall that's 700 feet tall, and I'm guessing 1,500 to 1,700 feet long. I mean, it's massive. It towers above anything in the environment around it. Um, you wonder why they had, what was it, 4 reactors at Chernobyl for a city of 43,000 people, and then you had Pripyat, which was right next door, and that was only I don't remember the exact thing, but it was like 50 or 70,000. You know, 4 nuclear reactors to supply that small of a local population. Um, Granted, they're shipping it out to other towns and cities, but it's curious that that was going on. The nuclear reactors in Fukushima. Um, After the first explosion, I think it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that there was going to be catastrophic consequences. You cannot have. Okay, I'm going to go back and backtrack. To understand the first explosion, you have to understand what was going on. They're dumping salt water into the containment dome to cool the rods because they've lost capacity to pump water and circulate the coolant. So when you have that happen, you have evaporation of the water, which causes hydrogen and oxygen, and then that will build up inside the containment dome. Now, what nobody's really mentioned is, what type of an explosion that is. Have you heard of a fuel air bomb? I personally think that that's probably what happened, and probably the part of the reason why the entire containment facility just disintegrated as it exploded. Um, Now that's going to rip out wiring. It's going to rip out piping. It's going to. I mean, it may have cracked the interior containment dome. We don't know. We know that supposedly the rods were partially exposed. We know that there's been partial meltdown. Um, Catastrophic is the only word that I can use to explain what is going on in Japan right now. And the the consequences of what has happened over there is not going to be immediate. There are consequences that will be felt immediate, but the main consequences are not going to be an immediate thing. Um, in another video, I'm going to go further into this topic also, but I mentioned to a friend of mine that um, we may have just switched from timeline 1 to timeline 2. If you understand the background the the timeline theories of what's going on, the J rods, the Orions, the P52s, and the P45s, um, you you will, if you understand that background to the possibilities, you will understand that depending on how we handle what has happened in Japan, and I mean we as the nations of the world and as individual people on a local level. That is going to determine whether we continue on the timeline that we have right now, which granted I don't think that we are fully on timeline 1, which is the optimal that we could have happen. Um, I think we're probably about 1.8 and sliding towards timeline 2. And timeline 2 is a global catastrophe, which would be Cliff High's tipping point. It would be the death of 4.1 to 4.5 billion people around the planet, and it's not going to happen in a day or in a week or a month. It'll be over the course of a year, or maybe it might take 6 months, or whatever. But if you see what happens in Japan with 199 plus earthquake, imagine what would happen if you have 5 or 6 within the space of a day or an hour. I mean, you not even in the same area. Think you have one in Japan, you have one in Alaska, you have one off the coast of California. You have a tsunami coming from Japan, you have a tsunami coming from California, and then whether or not the one in Alaska was on land or off the coast, whether if it was on land it caused a landslide, which could cause an tsunami. You cannot even imagine the amount of death and devastation that would happen if something like that actually were to come about. And I think with the things that have been happening and the way things are accelerating, and I am going to do this in another video also, I think that if the catastrophe does not happen on its own, it will be manipulated to happen. As I said, I'm going to go into that in another video. I'm about out of time on this one. So, good luck, everyone, and God be with the people in Japan. Yeah. Bye.